chosen one, why have you always felt like a stranger in your own life? Why does everyone around you seem to fit perfectly into this world, while you've spent 70, 80, maybe 90 years feeling like you were born in the wrong place at the wrong time, carrying a weight nobody else could see? What if I told you that feeling wasn't loneliness, it was recognition? Listen to me carefully, beloved. If your eyes found this message at this exact moment, in this exact season of your life, that wasn't the algorithm, that wasn't chance. That was heaven itself interrupting your scroll, because there's something you need to know before another day passes. Something that will finally make sense of why your entire life has felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. You didn't stumble here. You were summoned. Most people get called at 40, some at 20. But you were marked before your first breath. Before your mother held you, before anyone knew your name, God whispered it across eternity and said, "This one is mine." I'm talking to the grandmother who's lived long enough to bury dreams alongside people she loved. I'm talking to the grandfather who worked 40 years at a job that never knew his worth. You've survived wars, recessions, heartbreaks that should have destroyed you. And somewhere deep in your chest, there's always been this question: why am I still here? Because you were chosen from birth. And tonight, the veil lifts. Before we go deeper, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just giving, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let the Spirit lead your heart. Right now, I need you to do something. Don't just watch. Participate. Type these 4 words in the comments. I'm listening, Lord. Not for me, for heaven. Because engagement is agreement, and agreement activates what God has been holding back until you are ready to receive it. What I'm about to reveal, these 7 signs, they're not theory, they're confirmation. And sign has shown alone will explain why you never fit in, why you've always felt different, why even in a crowded room you felt utterly alone. Your whole life may have been divine design. You weren't forgotten, you were hidden. And it's time to remember why. Why did you sit alone at lunch while other kids laughed in groups you couldn't penetrate? Why did family reunions leave you feeling more isolated than if you'd stayed home? Why, even now at 75, 85 years old, do you still feel like you're speaking a language nobody else understands? What if that loneliness wasn't rejection? What if it was assignment? Listen to me, dear one. I need you to go back with me. Back to when you were 7 years old, sitting in the corner of that classroom while everyone else seemed to know the rules of a game you were never taught. You watched them connect so easily, laugh so freely, belong so naturally. And you felt like you were standing behind glass, seeing everything, but never quite reaching it. Your teacher called you quiet, your parents called you different, the kids called you weird, but nobody knew what to call the weight you carried in that small chest, the knowing, the sensing, the way you could feel when someone was lying before they finished their sentence, the way rooms felt loud even when they were silent, the way faces looked transparent, and you could see straight through to the pain people were hiding. You thought something was wrong with you. You spent decades trying to fix it, didn't you? Trying to laugh at jokes that weren't funny, trying to care about things that felt meaningless, trying to shrink yourself small enough to fit into spaces that were never built for someone carrying eternity in their bones. But here's what nobody told you. Here's what the enemy worked overtime to keep hidden from your understanding. You weren't broken, beloved. You were marked. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5. Read it again. Before you were formed, before your mother's first contraction, before your father's first prayer over your crib, before your name was written in any earthly record, God knew you. Not just knew about you, knew you, intimately, personally, specifically, and He set you apart, not set you aside. set you apart. There's a grand canyon of difference between those two phrases. Set aside means forgotten, discarded, shelved. But set apart, that means separated for sacred use, consecrated, chosen for a purpose so specific that you couldn't be allowed to blend in with everyone else. You were a lighthouse placed in the middle of land because God knew the storms would come later. And when they did, when people's lives started falling apart, when marriages crumbled and children rebelled and money disappeared and health failed, they would need someone who had learned to stand alone. Someone who had learned to find God in the silence when everyone else needed noise to survive. Your family didn't understand you, did they? Thanksgiving dinners where you felt like a foreigner at your own table. Christmas mornings where the gifts felt empty and the laughter felt hollow. You'd sit there wondering why you couldn't just be normal, why you couldn't just enjoy what everyone else enjoyed. Your siblings fit in. Your cousins fit in. Even the neighbors' kids seemed to have an instruction manual you never received. And church. Oh, beloved, even church sometimes felt like the loneliest place on earth. You'd sit in those pews, listening to sermons that everyone else nodded along to, but something in your spirit would wrestle with questions nobody else seemed to be asking. You'd raise your hand in Sunday school, and the teacher would look at you like you'd spoken in tongues. Your questions were too deep. Your hunger was too intense. Your seeking was too desperate for their comfortable Christianity. So you learned to stay quiet. You learned to smile and nod. You learned to hide the fire burning in your chest, because every time you let it show, people either tried to extinguish it or stepped back from the heat. But that fire, that unquenchable, unexplainable, undeniable fire, that was the presence of the living God marking you as His own. You weren't misunderstood by accident. You were set apart on purpose. Every moment you felt like an outsider, you were actually being positioned as an insider to the kingdom of heaven. Every time you couldn't relate to the shallow conversations, God was developing your capacity for deep intercession. Every time you sat alone, you were learning to sit with Him. The loneliness you thought was your weakness, it was actually your training ground. Because chosen ones don't learn to hear God's voice in crowds, they learn it in caves, they learn it in wilderness. They learn it in the isolated places where there's nothing left to listen to except the still small voice that says, "You are mine, and I have set you apart for such a time as this." David knew this loneliness. Sent to the fields while his brothers stood before the prophet, forgotten by his own father when God came looking for the next king. But those fields, that isolation, that's where he learned to worship. That's where he killed lions and bears with his bare hands. That's where he became the man after God's own heart, not in the palace, but in the pasture. Joseph knew this loneliness. Hated by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison. But that pit, that prison, that's where God was positioning him to save nations. The very isolation that seemed like his destruction was actually his preparation for destiny. You've lived long enough now to see the pattern, haven't you? Every time you tried to force yourself to fit in, something in you died. But every time you embraced being different, something in you came alive. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. If this is touching something deep in your spirit right now, if you're finally understanding why you never belonged in places that should have felt like home, type these 3 words below. That was me. Because there are others watching this who need to know they're not alone in feeling alone. But here's what you need to understand before we move forward. That feeling of being set apart, it's about to make perfect sense. Because if sign has shown explained your loneliness, wait until we reach sign #3. It will explain the battles you're still fighting today and why the enemy has been after you since the day you were born. You know what haunts me when I look at people your age? It's not what you've lost, it's what you've survived. Think back with me for a moment. Go back to when you were 7 years old. Maybe you ran into the street chasing a ball and a car screeched to a stop inches from your body. Maybe you fell from a tree that should have broken your neck, but you walked away with just a bruise. Maybe you had scarlet fever when half the children in your neighborhood didn't make it through that same winter. You remember that moment, don't you? That split second when death brushed past you and kept walking. Now go to your teenage years. That car accident on Route 9 where the vehicle flipped 3 times, but you crawled out without a scratch. That time you were supposed to be on the bus that crashed, but something made you miss it. That fever of 104 degrees that the doctor said should have taken you, but by morning you were sitting up asking for breakfast. Fast forward to your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, the heart attack that should have killed you but didn't, the cancer they said was terminal, yet here you are decades later. The depression so deep you stood at the edge, but someone pulled you back. Dear one, listen to me carefully. You have buried friends, you have buried classmates, you have buried siblings, cousins, people who were healthier than you, stronger than you, younger than you. You have stood at gravesides of people who had every reason to outlive you. Yet you are still here. You think that's coincidence? You think that's luck? You think you just happened to dodge every bullet that had your name on it? No, beloved. You were covered. You were shielded. You were protected by forces you couldn't see and a purpose you didn't yet understand. The Bible tells us in Psalm 91:11, "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." Not some of your ways, not the easy days, all your ways. Every close call, every near miss, every moment when death knocked on your door and couldn't come in, that was angelic assignment. You were like a glass ornament that fell from a 10-foot shelf onto concrete and somehow stayed whole. Every law of nature said you should have shattered into 1,000 pieces, but unseen hands caught you mid-fall. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what the enemy has been whispering to you for decades. He's been trying to convince you that your survival means nothing, that you're just lucky, that you've simply lived longer than others by random chance. He wants you to believe that being 87 years old with a body that's been through hell and back is just biology. That's a lie from the pit of darkness. Listen to what happened to the Apostle Paul. In 2 Corinthians 11, he lists his near-death experiences. 5 times he received 40 lashes minus 1, 3 times beaten with rods, once pelted with stones and left for dead, 3 shipwrecks, a night and a day in the open sea. By any human calculation, Paul should have died a dozen times over, but he didn't. Why? Because his assignment wasn't complete. Your assignment isn't complete either. God didn't preserve you through the Great Depression just so you could watch game shows in your final years. He didn't protect you through World War II, through Korea, through Vietnam, through 9/11, through every economic crash and personal catastrophe just so you could fade quietly into irrelevance. He kept you alive because you carry something that this generation desperately needs. Think about Moses. The very day he was born, Pharaoh ordered every Hebrew baby boy thrown into the Nile River. Death was waiting at his delivery. But Exodus 2-3 tells us his mother got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. That basket, that fragile, handmade basket, floated past crocodiles, past Egyptian soldiers, straight into Pharaoh's daughter's hands. One baby out of thousands, protected, preserved. Because 80 years later, that baby would stand before Pharaoh and demand freedom for an entire nation. You are that baby, grown old now, finally understanding why you were protected. Every time the diagnosis should have been terminal protection, every time the accident should have been fatal angelic intervention, every time your heart should have stopped divine CPR, you weren't lucky. You were locked in by heaven's assignment. But here's the urgency I need you to feel in your bones right now. God didn't preserve you this long just to let you waste your final chapter. He didn't assign angels to guard you for 9 decades just so you could spend your last years doubting your purpose. The very fact that you're still breathing, still watching this message, still feeling that fire in your chest, that's proof your mission isn't over. In fact, beloved, your mission might just be beginning. You have wisdom that can't be taught in seminars. You have faith that's been tested by real fire. You have a testimony that can raise the dead back to belief. And there's someone out there right now, a grandchild, a neighbor, a stranger, who needs to hear from someone who's been protected through impossible odds. If you feel that truth stirring in your spirit, if something in your chest just confirmed what I'm speaking over your life, don't just sit there, say it out loud. Type it in the comments right now. Protected since birth. Because when you declare it, you're not just acknowledging the past, you're activating the future. You're telling heaven you finally understand why you survived when others didn't. But protection wasn't the only sign. There's something else that marked you from birth, something even more mysterious, something that explains why you've always felt different. Listen to me, beloved. I need you to stop right where you are and think back over your life, not the highlights, not the victories. I'm talking about the battles, the ones that nearly broke you, the ones that left scars nobody else can see. Why have your struggles been so relentless? Why does it feel like every time you took 2 steps forward, something knocked you 10 steps back? Why have you buried more dreams than most people ever dared to dream? Why has your health failed you in ways doctors couldn't explain? Why did money slip through your fingers no matter how hard you worked? Why did the people you trusted most become the ones who betrayed you deepest? You thought it was bad luck. You thought maybe you did something wrong. You thought perhaps God was punishing you for sins you couldn't even remember committing. But what if I told you something that will shatter everything you've believed about your pain? Your battles weren't random, they were targeted. Hell saw your calling before you did. The enemy recognized the threat you posed to his kingdom while you were still in diapers, still learning to walk, still innocent and unaware. And he's been trying to destroy you ever since. Think about your childhood for a moment. Were you the sick one? The one who spent weeks in the hospital while your siblings played outside? Did strange accidents follow you? Did you almost die more than once before you even turned 10? That wasn't coincidence, dear one. That was spiritual warfare against someone heaven had already marked for greatness. Look at your teenage years. Did you struggle with depression that had no name? Did darkness visit you in ways your friends couldn't understand? Did you feel crushing loneliness even when surrounded by people? The enemy was trying to convince you early that you were worthless, that you didn't belong, that this world would be better off without you. Why? Because he knew what you would become if you survived. And you survived. Now think about your adult life. Every financial crisis that came out of nowhere. Every relationship that crumbled just when you thought you'd found stability. Every door that slammed shut just as opportunity seemed within reach. Every diagnosis that terrified you. Every loss that left you gasping for air, wondering if you could take one more breath, one more step, one more day. Your heartbreaks weren't ordinary. Your losses weren't casual. You were hit harder because you were marked earlier. The Bible tells us in Job 1-8 that God himself pointed Job out to Satan. Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And what happened next? Everything Job had was stripped away. His wealth vanished, his children died, his health crumbled. His own wife told him to curse God and die. But here's what most people miss about Job's story. The attack wasn't proof that Job had sinned. The attack was proof that Job carried something hell desperately wanted to destroy. His righteousness, his integrity, his unshakable faith. You are Job in this generation. Every attack you've endured, every storm you've weathered, every night you've cried yourself to sleep, wondering why God allowed such suffering, it was never about punishment. It was about preparation. It was never about your weakness. It was about your worth. Think about diamonds, chosen one. How are they formed? Through intense heat and crushing pressure deep beneath the Earth's surface. For millions of years, carbon is squeezed, compressed, subjected to forces that would pulverize ordinary rock into dust. But diamonds don't crumble, they crystallize. They become the hardest natural substance known to man. They become so valuable that kings wear them as crowns. You were placed under decades of pressure not to destroy you, but to reveal you. Every year you spent struggling financially wasn't God withholding provision. It was God teaching you that your security doesn't come from a bank account. Every relationship that ended in betrayal wasn't proving you were unlovable. It was removing people who would have held you back from your true calling. Every health crisis that brought you to your knees wasn't evidence that God had abandoned you. It was driving you into such desperate dependence on Him that nothing, absolutely nothing, could shake your faith anymore. Look at Jesus. Before He ever preached a sermon, before He performed a single miracle, before His ministry even began, what happened? Matthew chapter 4 tells us, the Spirit led Him into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. 40 days and 40 nights of fasting, of spiritual warfare, of hell itself trying to derail the Messiah before He could save the world. If the Son of God had to face intense spiritual attack before His purpose could manifest, why did you think you'd be exempt? What attacked you was never your weakness, it was your worth. The enemy doesn't waste his best weapons on people who pose no threat. He doesn't send his most vicious demons after ordinary believers who will live quiet lives and die quietly. No, beloved. He reserves his fiercest assaults for the ones who carry something that terrifies him. The ones who, if they ever fully wake up to who they are, will tear down strongholds, set captives free, and turn entire generations back to God. You survived what was designed to kill you. That alone proves you're not ordinary. Every scar you carry is a medal of honor. Every tear you've cried is liquid evidence that you refused to quit when quitting would have been easier. Every morning, you woke up and chose to keep going when everything in you screamed to give up. That was the calling in your DNA, refusing to die. But here's what I need you to understand right now, in this very moment. The battles you faced weren't the end of your story. They were the beginning of your authority. Every giant you've slain in secret has qualified you to lead others into victory. Every wilderness you've crossed has given you the map to guide the lost back home. Sign #4 is going to explain something even more mysterious. It may explain every strange moment you've felt watched by heaven, every time you've sensed angels in the room, every impossible rescue that defied logic. But do not leave now. I'm telling you with everything in me, the next 3 signs are where most people break down in tears. Because what's coming will connect every dot, answer every question, and reveal why your entire life has been orchestrated exactly as it has. The battles weren't meant to break you, chosen one. They were meant to build you. And you're about to discover what heaven has been building you for. You know what nobody talks about? Those moments when you were 5 years old, sitting in your grandmother's church on a wooden pew that was too hard for a child, and suddenly, out of nowhere, you felt something. You couldn't name it. You couldn't explain it. But it was there. Warm, heavy, real. While other kids were fidgeting with their shoes or counting ceiling tiles, you were feeling the weight of eternity pressing down on your small shoulders. What was that? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. That wasn't your imagination. That wasn't the heat from the summer sun pouring through stained glass windows. That was God Himself, introducing Himself to you before you even knew His name. You felt Him long before you understood Him. Think back with me for a moment. I'm talking about real memories now, not Sunday school stories. I'm talking about that night when you were 8 years old and you woke up at 2 a.m. with an unexplainable peace flooding your bedroom. No reason for it, no logic to it, just presence. Or that afternoon when you were 12, walking home from school alone, and suddenly you just knew that you weren't alone. Something was walking with you. Someone was there. Maybe it was that car accident when you were 17. The one that should have killed you. The one where time slowed down and you heard a voice clear as crystal say, "Not yet." And when the metal stopped crashing and the glass stopped shattering, you walked away without a scratch while the car looked like it had been through a war. The doctors called it luck. Your family called it a miracle. But you knew what it really was. You knew who it really was. He's been there your entire life. The Bible tells us in Jeremiah 1-5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." But that's not just poetry, beloved. That's not just a nice verse to embroider on a pillow. That's God declaring that your relationship with Him didn't start when you got saved at a church altar. It didn't begin when you got baptized in that river or that tank. It started before your mother ever held you. You were known before you were formed. Here's what this means for you right now, at 70, at 80, at 90 years old. Your memory holds decades of divine whispers, moments that other people dismissed as coincidence, you recognized as conversation. Times when other people saw random chance, you saw the fingerprints of heaven. You've been like a radio tuned to a frequency no one else could hear. While the world was listening to static, you were catching signals from another realm. While everyone else was drowning in noise, you were hearing the still, small voice that Elijah heard in that cave in 1 Kings chapter 19. That verse says God wasn't in the earthquake, He wasn't in the wind, He wasn't in the fire, He was in the whisper. And you've been hearing that whisper your whole life, haven't you? That's why silence has never frightened you the way it frightens others. That's why you could sit in an empty house for hours and never feel alone. That's why even now, in your golden years, when everyone tells you that you should be lonely, you know something they don't know. You're never alone because He's never left. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what I need you to hear with every fiber of your being. The enemy has spent your entire lifetime trying to convince you that those moments weren't real. He's whispered in your ear for decades. You imagined it. You made it up. You were just emotional. You were just scared. You were just a child who didn't know better. That's a lie from the pit of hell. Every moment you felt Him in that hospital room when they said you wouldn't make it through the night. In that chapel when you buried your spouse and thought your heart would stop beating. In that kitchen at 3 a.m. when you couldn't sleep and you poured out your soul to a God you couldn't see but somehow knew was listening. Every single one of those moments was real. More real than anything you've ever touched with your hands. The prophet Samuel was just a boy sleeping in the temple when God called his name. 3 times he heard it. 3 times he ran to Eli, thinking the old priest had called him. But 1 Samuel 3-7 tells us something stunning. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, neither was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him. He heard God before he knew God, just like you did. And now, after all these years, after all these decades of feeling Him, sensing Him, knowing He was there, even when you couldn't prove it, now you understand. You weren't discovering God throughout your life. You were remembering Him, remembering the one who knew you first, remembering the one who called you before you could answer, remembering the relationship that existed before time itself. Your entire life hasn't been a journey to find God. It's been God revealing to you what was always true. You were His from the very beginning. If this is your story, if you've felt Him in ways you could never explain to anyone else, if you've carried this knowing in your chest for 70, 80, 90 years, write it now. I've always felt Him, because that recognition you feel right now, that's not nostalgia, beloved. That's confirmation. But there's something else you need to know about why you felt His presence so powerfully, and it has everything to do with sign #5, which explains why suffering has followed you like a shadow. You know what nobody ever talks about? The weight of being the person everyone tells their secrets to. Think back, beloved. How many times has a complete stranger walked up to you in a grocery store line and suddenly started pouring out their marriage problems? How many times has someone at church grabbed your hand after service and whispered things they've never told their own family? How many times have your own children, your grandchildren, even your spouse come to you carrying burdens they won't share with anyone else? You thought it was coincidence. You thought maybe you just have one of those faces. But what if I told you it was something far more profound than that? You carry spiritual gravity. And broken people are drawn to you like metal to a magnet. Listen carefully. In John chapter 4, when Jesus sat by that well in Samaria, a woman came to draw water. She was a stranger. She was an outcast. She'd been married 5 times and was living with a man who wasn't her husband. Nobody in that town would even look at her. But when she encountered Jesus, what happened? She opened up. She confessed everything. Why? Because chosen ones carry a frequency that makes people feel safe enough to tell the truth. You've been that well your entire life, haven't you? That co-worker who barely knew you but told you about her abortion. That neighbor who confessed his addiction in your driveway at midnight. That cousin who finally admitted the abuse at your kitchen table. They came to you because something in your presence said, you can be broken here, you can be honest here, you won't be judged here. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what I need you to understand. While everyone else was drinking from your well, who was filling you? While you carried their grief, their shame, their darkest secrets, who carried yours? You became the emotional dumping ground for an entire community, and nobody ever stopped to ask if you were okay. You thought this made you weak. You thought being the person everyone confessed to meant you were somehow less than those who had it all together. But that's a lie straight from hell. You didn't attract broken people because you were weak. You attracted them because you carried healing. Think about the woman with the issue of blood in Mark chapter 5. For 12 years she bled. For 12 years, everyone she touched became ceremonially unclean. But when she touched Jesus, what happened? The flow stopped. The healing transferred. Why? Because healing doesn't come from perfection. It comes from presence. Divine presence. That's what you carry, chosen one. Not answers, not solutions, not perfect theology. You carry presence. The presence of someone who's been through hell and came out still believing in heaven. The presence of someone who's been broken and learned how to let God put the pieces back together. The presence of someone who knows that the darkest valley doesn't disqualify you from the mountaintop. 1 Peter 2 verse 9 calls you a chosen generation, a royal priesthood. But do you know what a priest actually does? A priest stands between heaven and earth, between the holy and the broken, between God's perfection and humanity's pain. That's you. That's what you've been doing for 70, 80, 90 years without even knowing there was a name for it. But I need to tell you something that's going to set you free. You are a spiritual well. People drink from you without knowing who filled you. But here's the mystery they never see. Wells don't fill themselves. Every drop of wisdom you pour out, every word of comfort you speak, every moment of strength you lend to someone else's weakness comes from somewhere deeper than you. God has been filling you in the secret place. Every tear you've cried in private, He's been turning into rivers of living water. Every heartbreak you've survived, He's been transforming into healing for others. Every time you felt empty, He was actually creating more capacity for you to carry His presence. You thought people confessing to you was draining you. But what if it was actually proving that God trusts you with sacred things? What if strangers opening their hearts to you wasn't random, but recognition? Their spirit recognizing your spirit. Their brokenness recognizing your healing. Their darkness recognizing your light. Proverbs 11 verse 25 says it perfectly. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself. You've spent a lifetime watering others. Now watch what God does with your obedience. But there's something even deeper happening here. Something that sign number 6 is going to reveal. Because while you've been carrying everyone else's burdens, there's one burden you've been carrying in silence. One weight that nobody talks about, but every elderly saint feels pressing on their chest. The question of whether any of it mattered. Listen to me, chosen one. I need you to think back for a moment. Not to the good times, though God knows you've had some. I need you to go back to that season when everything fell apart. You know the one I'm talking about. Maybe it was 1987 when the doctor looked you in the eye and said those words that still echo in your mind at 3 a.m. Maybe it was that Tuesday morning when you came home and half your life was gone, packed into boxes, loaded into a truck, disappeared with someone who promised forever. Maybe it was the phone call that came too late, the funeral you had to plan alone, the bills that kept coming even though your hands were shaking too hard to write the checks. Maybe it was last year. Maybe it was yesterday. But here's what I know about you, beloved. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still watching this message. And that is not an accident. Your survival is your certificate of being chosen. You want to know why you made it when others didn't, why you're still standing when stronger people fell, why your heart kept beating when everything in you wanted to stop, because God had an assignment on your life that hell itself couldn't cancel. Think about Job for a moment. This man lost everything in a single day. His children dead, his wealth gone, his health destroyed. His wife looked at him sitting in the ashes, covered in boils, and said, "Curse God and die." Even his closest friends accused him of secret sin. But Job 2:9-10 records his response. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? That man understood something most people never learn. Survival isn't about strength. It's about assignment. You've been bent by storms, dear one. I see you there. You've been twisted, broken, stripped bare by winds that would have uprooted anyone else. But look at you. You're like an old oak tree on a hillside, bark scarred, branches gnarled, but roots so deep that nothing, absolutely nothing, could tear you from the ground God planted you in. The world looks at you and sees someone who's been through too much, but heaven looks at you and sees someone who's been through enough to understand suffering, enough to offer real comfort, enough to speak with authority about God's faithfulness when everything looks finished. 2 Corinthians 1-4 says He comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. You didn't survive just for you. You survived for someone else who's drowning in the same storm you already weathered. Your scars are their roadmap. Your testimony is their lifeline. But let me tell you something that's going to shake you. Every season that tried to break you was actually a test of your calling. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty vessels. He doesn't send his fiercest demons after people who pose no threat to his kingdom. The intensity of your warfare has always been proportional to the magnitude of your destiny. Why did you almost lose your mind in 1992? Because hell saw what God was preparing you to carry in 2025. Why did that sickness try to take you out in your 60s? Because the enemy knew you had another 30 years of impact left. Why did loneliness wrap around your throat like a noose? Because isolation is the weapon of choice against people who are destined to influence multitudes. You didn't survive by luck. You survived by assignment. David knew this truth. When he stood before Goliath, he didn't talk about his resume. He talked about his survival. 1 Samuel 17:37. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Every private victory prepared him for the public battle. Your survival stories aren't just memories, beloved. They're weapons. Right now, somebody's watching this who's in the middle of their breaking season. They think it's over. They think they can't make it. They need to see you 70, 80, 90 years old, still standing, still praising, still believing. They don't need another sermon. They need a living testimony that God keeps His word when everything else fails. You are that testimony. Like a tree bent by storms yet still standing, you became stronger in the places you thought were broken. The divorce didn't destroy you. It taught you that God is the only husband who never leaves. The sickness didn't kill you. It showed you that your life is hidden in Christ, not in your body's strength. The loss didn't finish you. It proved that your hope was never in what you could see with your eyes. Every scar is a story. Every survival is a sermon. Every season you endured is evidence that you carry something eternal. If you're still here after everything hell threw at you, if you're still breathing, still believing, still standing on the promises of God, type these 2 words right now, still standing, because your survival wasn't the end of your story. It was the qualification for your next chapter. And what God is about to do through you will require every ounce of endurance you built in the breaking seasons. But there's one more sign, one final mark that separates the chosen from the called, and this one might be the most shocking of all. Listen to me, beloved. I know what you've been asking God in the silence of your bedroom at 3 in the morning. I know the question that sits heavy on your chest when you stare at the ceiling, unable to sleep. You've whispered it through tears, through frustration, through that ache that only comes when you feel time slipping through your fingers like sand. God, why now? Why so late in my life? You look at your hands, these hands that have worked, raised children, buried loved ones, held on when everything told you to let go. You see the lines, the age spots, the trembling that wasn't there 30 years ago. And you wonder, if I was chosen from birth, why did you wait until I'm 75 to show me? Why didn't you use me when I was strong, when I had energy, when I had time? But what if I told you that heaven's answer will shatter everything you thought you knew about your purpose? God waited because now you're finally strong enough. You think strength is a 20-year-old body that can work 12 hours without breaking. You think strength is climbing stairs without getting winded, remembering names without effort, moving through life with ease. But that's not the strength God needs for what He's about to do through you. The strength God requires can only be forged in the furnace of decades. It can't be taught in seminary. It can't be downloaded from a book. It can only be earned through surviving what should have destroyed you and still choosing faith, through burying people you loved and still believing in resurrection, through watching dreams die and still daring to hope. Moses was 80 years old when God called him from that burning bush. 80. Exodus 7:7 tells us plainly, Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. The world would have written him off, put him in a retirement home, told him his time had passed. But God said, now you're ready. Now you've been humbled enough, tested enough, broken enough to carry the weight of leading millions. You see, the mission God has for you doesn't require youthful energy. It requires ancient wisdom. It doesn't need speed. It needs stability. It doesn't call for strength of body. It demands strength of spirit that only comes from walking through hell and coming out singing. God saves His most trusted missions for His oldest soldiers. Think about it. Would you trust your most precious treasure to someone who's never been tested? Would you hand your greatest secret to someone who's never learned to keep their mouth shut? Would you give your most important assignment to someone who hasn't proven they'll stand when everyone else runs? The reason you've lived this long, through the heart attack that should have taken you, through the depression that almost won, through the financial ruin that tried to break you, is because God was developing something in you that the young don't have. They have enthusiasm. You have endurance. They have passion. You have proven faithfulness. They have dreams. You have scars that testify to God's faithfulness. Anna the prophetess was 84 years old when she finally saw what she'd been praying for her entire life. Luke 2:37 tells us she never left the temple but worshipped night and day, fasting and praying. 84 years of waiting. 84 years of watching younger people get their miracles while she kept showing up, kept believing, kept praying. But when baby Jesus walked through those temple doors, she was the first to recognize him, not the young priests, not the scholars, the elderly widow who had spent decades learning to hear God's voice in the silence. Your waiting wasn't wasted time, it was training time. Every closed door taught you that God's delays are not God's denials. Every financial struggle taught you that He provides in ways the world can't understand. Every health scare taught you that your life is not your own. Every betrayal taught you who to trust. Every loss taught you what really matters. It wasn't delay. It was development. Let me say that again because your soul needs to hear it. It wasn't delay. It was development. The longest burning candles shine brightest at dusk. While everyone else's flame flickered and died, yours kept burning. Slower, yes. Steadier, absolutely. And now, in what the world calls your twilight years, your light is about to illuminate darkness that has been waiting for someone exactly like you. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to the promise. Abraham was 100. Genesis 21:5 declares it without apology. God didn't just make them parents in their old age. He made them proof that His timeline doesn't match ours, that His purposes don't expire, that what He starts in youth, He often completes in age. You think you've missed your window? You haven't even entered your season yet. You think your best days are behind you? God is laughing because he's been saving the best wine for last. You think you're too old to matter? Heaven is positioning you for the very reason you've survived everything that tried to kill you. This generation doesn't need another young voice with big dreams and no scars. They need your voice, your wisdom, your testimony that spans decades of watching God be faithful when nothing made sense. They need to see wrinkles that tell stories of survival. They need to hear from someone who's buried enough to believe in resurrection. Your later years are not your retirement from purpose. They're your deployment into it. Right now, if this is settling into your spirit like truth you've always known but never heard spoken, say it out loud wherever you are. Don't just think it, speak it. I'm ready now, Lord. Because the mission that's been waiting for you doesn't need you younger. It needs you now, exactly as you are. With every scar, every grey hair, every hard-won piece of wisdom, God didn't wait too long. He waited until you were finally ready to carry what he's about to place in your hands. Let me ask you something that's going to cut straight to your bones. Why has your family tree been haunted by the same demons for 3 generations? Why did your grandfather drink himself into an early grave? Why did your mother carry a sadness so deep she could never name it? Why did your father work himself to death and still die broke? You thought it was bad luck. You thought it was just the way things were. But what if I told you it was warfare and you were born to end it? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. You weren't just born into your family. You were assigned to your family. There's a monumental difference. Most people inherit a bloodline. You inherited a battle. While others got traditions and recipes, you got generational curses and spiritual assignments that have been waiting decades, sometimes centuries, for someone strong enough to break them. Think about your childhood for a moment. You watched your parents repeat the same mistakes their parents made. You saw the same poverty, the same rage, the same silence that suffocated truth. You felt the weight of secrets nobody would speak out loud. Addiction passed down like an heirloom. Depression wore into the furniture. Divorce became the family business. And somewhere deep inside, even as a child, you knew. You knew you were different. You knew you were born to break what they couldn't. Exodus 20:5 warns us that the iniquity of the fathers visits the children to the 3rd and 4th generation. But here's what most preachers won't tell you. That same verse ends with a promise. God shows mercy to thousands of generations of those who love him and keep his commandments. You are that mercy, beloved. You are the generation where the curse stops and the blessing begins. Your grandmother prayed prayers she never saw answered. Your grandfather carried dreams he never got to live. Your mother fought battles she didn't have the weapons to win. But every tear they cried, every desperate plea they whispered into the darkness it was building toward you. You are their wildest answered prayer, the one they couldn't become. You weren't placed in your family by accident. You were strategically positioned by heaven itself. Where they fell, you stood. Where they gave up, you endured. Where they surrendered to the cycle, you said no more. You are the stopper in a leaking dam, the final one God trusted with the flood. Think about Moses, born into a family enslaved for 400 years. But God didn't just save Moses from slavery. He raised him in Pharaoh's palace, trained him in the wilderness, then sent him back to break the chains off an entire nation. One man, one assignment, millions set free. That's you, chosen one. You're not just surviving your family's pain. You're the deliverer God sent to end it. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. The reason your life has been so hard, the reason the attacks have been so vicious, the reason you've faced battles others your age never had to fight, it's because hell knows what you carry. You're not just breaking cycles for yourself, you're breaking them for everyone who comes after you. Your children won't inherit the addiction. Your grandchildren won't carry the depression. Your great-grandchildren will grow up in a bloodline that prays instead of runs, that worships instead of worries, that breaks chains instead of wearing them. But it required someone with your strength, someone who could take the hit and keep standing, someone who would choose God when everyone around them chose defeat. Galatians 6-9 promises, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart." Your due season isn't coming, beloved. It's here, right now. Every year you've survived, every tear you've cried, every time you got back up, it was all preparation for this moment, when you finally understand why your spirit always felt older than your body. You've been carrying the weight of generations because you were built to bear it. And now, right now, that weight is about to become your weapon. If you feel this revelation shaking something loose in your soul, if you recognize that your pain wasn't personal but generational warfare, type these 4 words in the comments: I break the cycle. Because what comes next will show you exactly how to wield the authority you were born with. You know what they said about you, don't you? Even when you were 7 years old, sitting in the corner of that Sunday school classroom while the other kids played tag and screamed with laughter, the teacher would look at you and whisper to your mother, "That child has old eyes. There's something about them that doesn't match their age." They were right. But what they didn't understand, what nobody could explain until this very moment, is that you weren't just mature for your age. You were carrying eternity in a child's body. Listen to me carefully, beloved. While other kids worried about baseball cards and hopscotch, you were lying awake at night, wondering about death, about God, about why people hurt each other. At 8 years old, you felt the pain of the world like it was your own. At 12, you understood betrayal before you could even pronounce the word. By 16, you'd already lived a lifetime in your spirit while your body was still growing. People called it being wise beyond your years. Heaven calls it being marked from birth. Proverbs 20:29 says, "The glory of young men is their strength, and the splendor of old men is their gray hair." But you, chosen one, you had gray hair in your spirit before your body ever showed a wrinkle. You carried ancient wisdom in young bones, and it exhausted you. This is why you're so tired now. Not just physically tired, though God knows your body aches in ways doctors can't explain. I'm talking about that bone-deep weariness that sleep doesn't touch. That soul fatigue that makes you wonder if you've got anything left to give. You've been tired your whole life, haven't you? Tired at 20 when you should have been wild with youth. Tired at 40 when everyone said you were in your prime. Tired at 60, 70, 80, wondering why you can't just rest like everyone else seems to. But here's what the enemy has been hiding from you, and here's what will shatter every lie you've believed about your exhaustion. You weren't tired because you were weak. You were tired because you were carrying revelation that most people won't understand until they meet Jesus face to face. Think about Jeremiah. God told him in Jeremiah 1-5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That boy was called a prophet before he could speak. And what did he spend his entire life doing? Weeping. They called him the weeping prophet because he felt the weight of God's heart for a nation that wouldn't listen. That's you. You've been feeling things other people couldn't feel. Seeing things other people couldn't see. Carrying burdens that weren't even your own because God trusted you with the weight of intercession before you knew what intercession meant. Your grandmother looks at you now and says, "You worry too much. You think too much. You feel too much." But she doesn't understand that you were born with a frequency tuned to heaven, and heaven is heavy with the cries of a broken world. This is why small talk has always felt like torture to you. This is why you couldn't just enjoy the party like everyone else. This is why you've spent decades feeling like you're on the outside looking in, watching people laugh about things that don't matter while you're carrying the weight of things that matter eternally. You weren't antisocial, you were assigned. Isaiah 46:3-4 declares, "You whom I have upheld since your birth and have carried since you were born, even to your old age and gray hairs, I am he who will sustain you." God didn't just call you in your later years, beloved. He's been carrying you since the moment you entered this world because he knew what he was placing inside you. Every tear you cried as a child when you couldn't explain why you felt so different, God collected it. Every night you stayed awake feeling the weight of something you couldn't name, he was there. Every moment you felt alone in your understanding, you were never alone. You were just walking with someone most people couldn't see. If this is you, if you've spent your entire life feeling older than your years, wiser than your experience, heavier than your circumstances, say it right now. This is me. Because what I'm about to tell you next will explain why heaven kept you alive when you wanted to give up, why you're still here when others have gone home, why your assignment isn't finished even though your body feels done. You know what breaks my heart? It's watching people in their 70s and 80s apologize for still being here. I'm just taking up space, they whisper. My time has passed. But what if I told you that's the biggest lie hell ever sold to heaven's generals? Listen to me, beloved. The years ahead of you are not about winding down, they're about winding up. What you thought was your sunset, that's your sunrise, and I can prove it. Think about your life right now, all those decades of confusion, all those moments that made no sense, all those doors that slammed shut when you thought they should open. You've carried questions for 50, 60, 70 years. Why did that happen? Why did I have to go through that? Why was my path so different from everyone else's? Here's the shocking truth. You weren't lost, you were being positioned. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 3:11, He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Did you catch that? Eternity in the human heart, not just heaven someday. Eternity right now, beating in your chest, whispering that there's more, there's purpose, there's meaning to every single thing you've endured. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. The years ahead of you will feel lighter than the decades behind you. Not because your body gets younger, but because your spirit finally understands. The weight you've been carrying, it wasn't burden, it was preparation. And now, right now, in this season of your life, God is about to show you why. You've noticed it already, haven't you? That strange clarity that's been creeping in. Suddenly, you understand why that marriage had to end. You finally see why that job didn't work out. You comprehend why your children had to walk their own paths. The fog is lifting, dear one. And what you're seeing isn't regret, it's legacy. Moses was 80 years old when God revealed his true assignment. Anna, the prophetess, was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. These weren't people whose best days were behind them. These were warriors whose preparation was finally complete. Think about a photograph developing in a dark room. For hours, it looks like nothing, just chemicals and paper and darkness. But slowly, gradually, an image emerges. First the outline, then the details, then the full picture in stunning clarity. That's your life right now. Like a photograph developing slowly, the picture of your life is now becoming clear. Every tear you cried was developing the image. Every prayer you whispered in darkness was bringing the picture into focus. Every moment you thought God had forgotten you, He was just waiting for the perfect exposure time. But here's the urgency you need to feel in your bones. Clarity always comes before calling. God doesn't reveal your purpose and then let you sit on the couch. He doesn't show you the full picture and then say, "Nice to know, right?" No. When heaven gives you clarity, it's because heaven is about to give you assignment. You're not getting older and wiser just to be wise. You're getting older and wiser to be deployed. The peace you're starting to feel, that's not retirement peace, that's warrior peace. The kind that comes when you finally know who you are and why you're here. Proverbs 16:31 declares, "Gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in a righteous life." Not was gained, is gained, present tense, active. Your crown is still being formed. Your glory is still being revealed. Your purpose is still unfolding. So, let me ask you something that's going to shake you. What if the best part of your story hasn't been written yet? What if everything up until now was just the prologue? What if God has been saving the most important chapter for last, because only now do you have the wisdom, the character, the faith to handle it? Something profound is coming for you, not past you. But you have to seal this word. You have to agree with heaven that clarity has arrived and calling is next. Comment right now, I receive clarity. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Right now, because the story is shifting, and you're about to discover what happens when a chosen one finally sees the full picture. Beloved, as we come to the end of this sacred journey together, I need you to hold on to 3 truths that will anchor your soul in the days ahead. First, those 7 signs you recognized in yourself. They weren't coincidences, they were confirmations. You were chosen before your first breath, marked by heaven, set apart for divine purpose. Every struggle, every lonely moment, every time you felt different, it was all preparation for what God is unveiling right now. Second, your age is not your expiration date, it's your activation date. Moses was 80, Anna was 84, Caleb was 85 when he conquered mountains. Your gray hair isn't evidence of decline, it's your crown of glory. The years ahead of you are not about fading away. They're about finally stepping into everything you were created to become. Third, the clarity you're receiving right now is the signal that your calling is next. God doesn't reveal purpose just to inform you. He reveals it to deploy you. But here's what I need you to know with absolute certainty. You are not walking this path alone. The God who chose you before birth is still working in your life at this very moment. He hasn't brought you this far to abandon you now. And beyond that, you have a community right here, thousands of believers who understand your journey, who see your value, who are ready to stand with you in prayer. So, let me ask you this. Now that you know you were chosen from birth, what will you do with the years you have left? Join me in prayer. Wherever you are, place your hand on your heart and receive these words. Heavenly Father, I lift up every precious soul hearing this message. You see them, Lord. You know the battles they've fought in silence, the tears they've cried alone, the years they've wondered if their life mattered. Tonight, I speak divine activation over them. Open their eyes to see what you've always seen. Awaken the gifts you planted in them before birth. Give them strength for every step ahead, wisdom for every decision, and courage to walk in their calling without apology. Heal their bodies, restore their hope, and surround them with people who recognize the anointing on their lives. Let them feel your presence right now. Let them know they are loved, they are chosen, they are not forgotten. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell us which of the 7 signs hit your spirit the hardest. Share your story. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if this message awakened something in you, share it with someone who needs to remember they were chosen too. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Your time is precious, and you chose to invest it seeking truth. That tells me everything about your heart. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We're building a community of chosen ones who refuse to fade quietly, who understand that their greatest chapter is still being written. You were chosen from birth. Walk like it, live like it, believe it. Until we meet again, remember, God's not finished with you yet.